to voluntarily come up and answer questions, but I'll yield to you.
I think it's really important to remind the American people about the timeline of President Trump's involvement here. We all know he ran for the presidency in 2024, saying he was going to release the files.
All right, before we dive into the chaos that unfolds in this hearing, I need you to see just how quickly Chairman Comer loses control of his own narrative. The moment you just saw, that's not even the peak, that's just the spark that lights the fuse. Because this hearing doesn't just get messy, it implodes. And the reason is simple. McGovern shows up with specifics, receipts, and an agenda to force Comer into the open. And Comer? He tries to dodge, redirect, rewrite, and reshuffle the facts. But the thing about hearings is this. When someone starts pressing with numbers, direct questions, and documented timelines, there's nowhere to hide. And that dynamic, that shift from control to panic, is the entire story of what unfolds here. You've got McGovern laying out concrete budget impacts, pointing to Trump-era layoffs, drilling straight into the local D.C. tax override bill. And every time he asks Comer something basic, something measurable, something any chairman should be prepared to answer, Comer either guesses, stalls, or swerves into talking points. Watch what happens when McGovern starts with the D.C. bill. It's supposed to be a straightforward line of questioning. Instead, Comer immediately looks like a guy holding a map upside down. And then, when McGovern pivots to the Epstein bill, the energy shifts from shaky to outright defensive. Because now the questions aren't just about budget mechanics. Now they're about subpoenas, compliance, Trump's own involvement, and whether the committee is actually pursuing facts or staging a political performance. This is where the whole hearing cracks open. You're going to see McGovern force the issue, pointing out the number of times Trump is mentioned in the files, the years of stonewalling, the redaction games, and the selective enforcement of subpoenas. And Comer, his answers start fraying. He interrupts. He changes the subject. He blames Democrats. Anything except addressing the actual questions. And once Walker comes in with detailed counterpoints, including the full timeline, the subpoena history, and the numbers that Comer doesn't want on the record, that's when you can feel the temperature rise. That's the moment where the defensive posture isn't even subtle anymore. But let's start with the first sustained confrontation. This is the moment that sets the tone for what becomes a steady unraveling. Watch how McGovern starts stacking facts while Comer tries to keep up. And fails.
Something that she supported. Were revised downward by $1 billion. $1 billion. So if we overturn D.C.'s new tax law, do you know what the fiscal impact of that decision will be on D.C.'s budget? I mean, according to D.C.'s chief financial officer, that would blow a $600 million hole in the budget. And, I raise these issues, and again, I agree. That if you really want to micromanage D.C., you should run for city council, because clearly, I don't think you're coming here knowing the first thing about D.C.'s budget process and fiscal situation. And I think Republicans in Congress think they know better than D.C.'s elected officials about these very technical local tax and budget decisions. But blowing a huge hole in their budget, seriously? You guys can't even manage the federal budget, which is your actual job. You guys just voted for this big ugly bill which adds $4 trillion to the federal debt. And you're going to tell D.C. how to run their government? I want to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record, Madam Chair, a letter signed by the Mayor, Muriel Bowser, and Chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia, Phil Mendelson.
Without objection.
One quote here. The district is already a month into the 2026 tax year and has begun accepting and processing tax returns. Disapproval at this stage would create huge administrative challenges, require taxpayers to refile their taxes, render existing guidance and forms obsolete, and necessitate rapid mid-year changes to tax administration systems. This is insane. This doesn't make any sense. So, Madam Chair, I really am frustrated that this is what we're going to spend our time doing this week. A bill that's going to create more chaos in the district. It just doesn't make any sense. Now to the second bill that we're here to talk about. President Trump referred to efforts to uncover the facts about the Epstein issue as I'm going to quote him, a hoax involving Democrats, not Republicans, end quote. and he instructed Attorney General Bondi to investigate Democrats, including President Clinton, and that's exactly what this is all about. My Republican friends, say that they are interested in getting to the truth of the Epstein files. I'm on the Rules Committee. We moved 9 times to try to get an amendment considered on the House floor to release the files. And the way we actually had a vote on it was through a discharge petition, because all of you blocked it.
That's not true. We,
blocked it. You
I
blocked it.
subpoenaed Pam Bondi for the Epstein
You blocked it.
documents.
Yeah. It is true. You did block it. You did block it. 9 times in this committee, we voted to make an amendment in order, and it was blocked. In addition to the Clintons, 6 other people were also subpoenaed. Attorney General Barr, she came in to testify. The rest, including the Clintons, all sent in written declarations. Yet this contempt resolution singles them out for partisan reasons. They are actively negotiating with the committee to provide testimony, most recently offering to sit for a transcribed interview, which I guess Chairman Comer has rejected, because this isn't really actually about getting at the facts. It's about...
Okay, this is where the imbalance becomes crystal clear. McGovern isn't just asking questions, he's cornering Comer with the kind of specifics that demand preparation. Look closely at the rhythm. McGovern names the fiscal year. He names the projected budget. He names the revenue numbers. He cites layoffs under the Trump administration. He even quotes DC's chief financial officer. Comer, meanwhile, keeps reaching for vague generalities until McGovern fills in the actual answer for him every time. That's not a neutral moment. That's a power shift. Look at how it builds. McGovern, how much revenue is raised locally? Comer talks about working with the mayor, completely unrelated. McGovern, the answer is $13 billion. McGovern, what's the capital budget? Comer, I'll have to dig through my notes. McGovern gives the number immediately. At every step, the person with the facts is McGovern, and the person reacting, scrambling, deferring, or avoiding is Comer. That's not strategy. That's survival. Then McGovern drops the impact figure. Overturning the tax law would blow a $600 million hole in DC's budget. And Comer doesn't dispute it. He doesn't even try. He just shifts. Watch how McGovern frames it. You guys can't even manage the federal budget, and you're going to tell DC how to run theirs? That's not a question. That's a body blow. And Comer has no response except to move the discussion somewhere else. But this is important. McGovern is setting up a pattern of Republicans overriding local governance without doing their homework while pushing a bill that creates administrative chaos mid-tax year. And the more McGovern lays out, the more Comer looks like he wasn't expecting to be challenged beyond a headline. Which brings us to the second major confrontation, the one that turns this from a budget embarrassment into a full-blown political meltdown, because when the topic shifts to Epstein, subpoenas, and the question of who's actually being held accountable, the tension spikes instantly. And it's in this next clip where you see Comer lose whatever grip he had left.
Even asking the president to voluntarily come up and answer questions, but I'll yield to you.
I think it's really important to remind the American people about the timeline of President Trump's involvement here. We all know he ran for the presidency in 2024, saying he was going to release the files. Shortly after being sworn in, his attorney general claimed to have a binder with the client list, and she was going to release the files. At some point, very quickly, President Trump changed his tune. He started doing everything in his power to prevent the release of the files. We know, based on reporting, the attorney general told him that he was mentioned in the files. We now know thousands of times he's mentioned in the file. So I think the committee,
thousands of times because he released the files.
half of them. He released half of them only when he was forced to, after doing everything in his power to prevent it.
Is there an update on the Clintons?
And I can share an update. The good news, Mr. Chairman, I think we'll be able to go through door number 1 that I outlined in my opening statement. I understand that the Clintons have agreed to appear for depositions and have agreed to the terms that you laid out in your most recent letter.
Are you aware of that?
No.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case.
Somehow the media and the Democrats get the correspondence way before we do.
My understanding is that their attorneys reached out to you.
Your staff has it,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
You better check with your staff. But if that's the case, why are we doing this then?
If the staff has it, they just got it, because we've been in there waiting for you all to stop talking on the last bill so we could present this bill. And look, you said
You can multitask.
transcribe,
You don't have
they
to-
rejected a transcribe, he wanted a transcribed interview. The difference in a transcribed interview and deposition, you don't have to answer the questions in a transcribed interview.
Right, but.
They've agreed to the terms in your
I
letter,
would
Mr.
suggest that you consult with your staff. Maybe Mr. Walkinshaw can maybe make sure that you're.
Yeah, we'll
I mean,
make sure you
my
get it.
understanding is that your staff has been notified of this.
If they've been
So, like, this
notified,
is
it's been in the last 15 minutes.
Mr.
Correct.
McGovern, yeah, Mr. McGovern, it just has come out in the last, I just received your note.
In the last 2
the
minutes.
last-
Right, well, then,
Yeah.
can we save it? Can we save all?
No, just because
All
we're
right,
going to
well,
have to review this and look at this, and
well,
look, this sets a bad precedent. So every time we issue a subpoena, and what Mr. Walkinshaw does not say is the Democrats made the motion for all these subpoenas. This was a Democrat motion, and a majority of the Democrats on the committee voted for
we
this
wanna
subpoena.
hear from everyone.
So you're trying to say it's
wanna hear from
partisan,
everyone.
and it's
Mr.
not
Walker,
Let me claim
partisan.
my time, Madam Chair.
It's bipartisan.
So, in other words, you're getting everything you want, but you still want to go ahead with the show.
You're talking about something nobody's even read yet,
this is
Mr.
so
McGovern.
All right, let me, so in the recent DOJ release of the Epstein files, there appears to be far more information of prominent people in Epstein's circle, including Donald Trump, Melania Trump, Elon Musk, and Howard Lutnick. Chairman Comer, do you know if top Trump advisor Elon Musk ever went to Epstein's rape island?
I haven't seen any evidence that he had.
Do you know?
But,
Trump?
look, if anybody that's been to the island, especially if
I
they went to the
reclaim my
island
time.
after he's convicted,
Madam Chair,
we're
let me-
interested in
let me
talking to
claim my
them.
time. Do you know if Trump advisor Steve Bannon ever went toEpstein's rape
I
island?
don't keep up with Steve
Yes, sir.
Bannon.
All right, do you know if Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, ever went to Epstein's rape island?
He has said he went to the island with his wife and kids and would never go back. He went somewhere. I don't know if it's an island, but he went somewhere.
And this right here is where the hearing goes off the rails for Comer. Pay attention to how this unfolds. McGovern isn't throwing hypotheticals. He's citing the number of times Trump appears in the Epstein files. He's pointing out that Trump's attorney general claimed to have the client list. He's walking through the timeline of how Trump promised to release the files, then immediately reversed course once he learned how often he was named. Every one of those points is sourced directly from the timeline the witnesses confirm, and Comer cannot risk engaging any of it head on. Watch his body language in this section. Look at how frequently he changes direction, how often he shifts into process complaints, and how quickly he starts deflecting into, well, what about Democrats? That is not confidence. That is retreat. And when McGovern asks whether Comer knows if Trump allies like Steve Bannon, Elon Musk, or Howard Lutnick ever visited Epstein's island, the evasiveness spikes again. McGovern, do you know? Comer repeats that he doesn't keep up with them. Think about that. In an investigation defined by who went where, when, and why, Comer's position is that he doesn't know the basic associations of Trump's own advisors. McGovern's point lands because it's unmistakable. He's highlighting the contrast between the aggressive targeting of Democrats and the glaring reluctance to even inquire about Trump world figures. Then comes the most damaging portion. Walker calmly lays out the history. The offers. The terms. The shifting objections. The fact that the Clintons had already agreed to conditions Comer previously said they refused. And Comer? He immediately denies it, only for his own staff to confirm minutes later that the updated information had arrived. That is the moment everything tilts, because it proves McGovern's underlying argument. This committee isn't chasing the truth, it's staging a spectacle. And look how Comer reacts when Walker details Trump's DOJ collecting 6 million documents, but choosing to release only 3 million, heavily redacted. Comer doesn't challenge the number. He doesn't challenge the timeline. He doesn't challenge the description of Trump's administration choosing what to release and what to hide. He just pivots to complaining about Democrats issuing subpoenas in the past. That's the pattern. When the facts get uncomfortable, the exits get busy. This entire exchange shows McGovern in control of the analytical ground, Walker reinforcing the factual spine of the argument, and Comer trapped between political instincts and factual constraints. By the time McGovern suggests a recess so Comer can review the Clinton update, it doesn't come off as snark. It comes off as mercy, because Comer is now reacting to information his own staff has, shifting defenses in real time and trying to push forward a contempt vote even after the stated conditions have been met. That is not strength. That is stubbornness on camera. And that's why this hearing spirals. Because the contrast between someone asking targeted, evidence-based questions and someone scrambling to maintain a narrative is stark. And it shows. The takeaway here is simple but powerful. The moment sunlight hits the process, the inconsistencies become impossible to ignore. McGovern came prepared with a linear argument, budget impacts, procedural failures, historical context, subpoena pattern, and Trump's personal involvement in suppressing the files. Comer came with talking points and partisan framing, and the moment he was forced to defend them, the gaps became visible. This hearing didn't just expose discrepancies in the investigation. It exposed who was actually driving toward answers and who was struggling to keep the steering wheel straight once the tough questions showed up. If you want more breakdowns like this where powerful people get pressed on the record, hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. Who do you think came out stronger in this hearing? And what was the one moment that changed the whole exchange?